And guess what happened? I actually ended up buying 2 properties in Memphis, Tennessee, without even setting foot there. But overall, I would say that one-on-one insights was 10x more valuable than a blog post or YouTube video. And I actually ended up talking to some of them even after I purchased properties in Memphis. So it actually became something more than just a one-time conversation. TLDR for the metrics. Right now, appreciation in the past 1.5 years is around 6%. Cash on cash with the current rent is about 6% as well. Based on market rate, cash on cash can get to 10%. And the rent to price ratio can get to up to 0.9%. Welcome to Fi Study Room, where we learn and achieve financial independence together. If you are ready to break free from the 9 to 5 and take control of your time, this is the right place. Quick note before we start. This episode is based on my personal experience and learning. It is not financial advice. So be sure to do your own research or talk to a pro if needed. Hi, welcome back to Fi Study Room, where we explore smart real estate paths to financial independence, especially for W-2 earners. I am PJ, and today we will be talking about a more quiet, more passive cousin of short-term rentals, long-term rentals, specifically as a remote investor. After dealing with all the chaos of short-term rentals for a year, I was actually craving for something calmer. Long-term rentals sounded like the answer. There are usually less turnover, less drama, and it's just more predictable. So I started researching about it. And guess what happened? I actually ended up buying 2 properties in Memphis, Tennessee, without even setting foot there. Well, let's get into how that happened and my lessons learned along the way. So first of all, why long-term rentals? I have heard a lot of things about long-term rentals, and people I know mostly had long-term rentals, and very few people actually had short-term rentals. And things I've heard about long-term rentals are it's really low maintenance compared to short-term rentals. If you pick the right market, it's possible that you will get pretty decent gains. And also you don't need to worry about midnight guest calling or constant turnovers. So at that time, I wanted something more passive, especially as a W-2 earner. I have a day job which kept me really busy, so I really don't want to add more worries or problems to my life. And also I wanted something profitable. So I started exploring long-term rentals with these goals in mind. 1, I want fewer tenant issues. Second, it should be a strong local market with decent appreciation. Third, it should give me consistent monthly cash flow. Well, after 1.5 years owning 2 long-term rentals, I would say that I have achieved goal number 1, which is fewer tenant issues. This is in a comparison to short-term rentals, where I almost have to constantly deal with tenant issues at least 1 time a month. For goal number 2 and 3, well, in the past 1.5 years is a really short of time. To be honest, there's not much appreciation that happened in the market that I picked. Let's see in the next few years how things will go. It's too early to say anything about appreciation yet. About constant monthly cash flow. Yes, it's positive. We do have monthly cash flow. And the gain is actually lower than what I expected. I'll be sharing the numbers later in more details. But overall, the performance for sure compared to short-term rental is much, much lower. All right, let's dive into the numbers first. As always, So let's look at my Memphis portfolio, and I've owned them for a year and a half. So far I have two. So for house number one, I got it around 180K, and now it's worth 190K. So that's about approximately 6% appreciation in 1.5 years. But I was checking the home value time series. It's actually fluctuating a lot. So it's hard to say in the long term how things will go, but we will keep observing. And right now it's rented for $13.95 per month. I'll have to admit it's way lower than what I had expected. When we were looking for tenant, it was so hard, and we had to reduce the price over and over again, and finally got someone at $13.95, while the house was originally listed for $1,600. And right now, when I was checking, the market rent for the same house is around $1,633. Well, if I get the house rented at the market rate, $1,636, that will be almost 10% cash on cash for me. But right now with $13.95, that's like maybe 6%. So really looking at cash on cash, 6% cash on cash is actually lower than average stock performance, right? So it sounds like maybe it's better off if I just keep that money in index fund. That's how things are looking like right now. But after calculating these numbers and looking at the market rate, I'm actually thinking right now what I can do to actually increase the rent to at least on par as the market rate. So the exercise I did for this podcast is actually very helpful for me to recheck and calibrate what we can do better. And in long-term rental, there is this 1% rule, right? So people say that to determine whether it's good or bad, there is this 1% rule that you can check. It means that your rent need to be at least 1% of the purchase price. Using the current market rate, $1,636, and how much we bought it for, which is like 180K, that's about 0.9%, which is already a pretty decent ratio. Again, that's conditioned on me getting the rent up to $1,636. So we will see how that goes. So that's house number one. TLDR for the metrics. Right now, appreciation in the past 1.5 years is around 6%. Cash on cash with the current rent is about 6% as well. Based on market rate, cash on cash can get to 10%. And the rent to price ratio can get to up to 0.9%. Going to house number two. So this one was bought with a 222K price. And now it's actually worth 216K. So there is actually a drop in the past year of 3%. So again, appreciation in just 1 year is too short term. There's nothing we can say from this. But again, this shows that appreciation sometimes is not really something that you can predict. Rent right now is $15.95. I was actually hoping for way more than that. I was actually hoping for way more than that, but similar to what happened to the first property, we had to reduce the price again and again, and eventually got the tenants moving in at $15.95. And right now, when I was checking similar houses, similar neighborhood, the market rate is actually $18.98. So this is again something that I need to think about. How do we get the rent up to the market rate? What are the things that we can do to get there? So with that market rate rent at $18.98 and the purchase price 222K, that's about 0.85% rent to price ratio, which is also decent. Summarize everything, right now, my two houses are not performing as what I had expected. It is actually giving me a less cash on cash return compared to the general stock market in the long term. So again, this is very short term, so we will check in again in the next few years to see how things goes. Just leaving the long-term side, even just for portfolio diversification and passive income, I would say that it's still solid, but we do have more work to do here. So these are the numbers. Now let's get into what exactly happened and then how I acquired the properties remotely, what are the things that I did? What are the lessons that I learned? I say one of the most important phase is the research phase. And this is usually the first step that I take whenever I'm exploring some new investment strategy. The approach that I use, I call it the job hunt strategy. This is where it all started. So similar to short-term rentals, I always start with research. I would spend months just researching and understanding the markets and to understand how we can actually execute to turn an idea into the reality. For the long-term rentals, I spent months researching 7 cities across 5 states, and I analyzed over 30 zip codes. I interviewed more than 10 people. How did I do that exactly? How did I even start from such a broad and ambiguous question into specific action items? Here are the steps. Number 1, how do you know what are the cities or states that you should look into? How do you even know where to start? I know that online there were so many YouTube videos talking about what people do, or investment vlogs or blogs, which teaches you different market, and then maybe the blogger would share some numbers around it. I find that useful. I do read it as a starting point, but what's more important and helpful for me is talking to real people who have invested, regardless of a success or failure in that specific city that I'm interested in. That's what I did. So for the starters, I had no idea where to even start, like what city to even look at. I searched Facebook groups. There are so many rental groups out there on Facebook, and so many passionate investors in each of the Facebook group. So I would join as many groups as possible, and I would just go through all the posts first, right? There were a lot of people sharing great information, their stories there, and I would literally just code message them. And I would just ask them for a quick call. Or if people are in the same place where I am, and I would ask for a coffee chat. So I searched Facebook groups. That took a lot of time. I also did some linking search. Well, I also did some internal search within my company. Within my company, there is also some internal groups for investors. Usually those are very helpful because at least they know that you are not anybody crazy. So it's usually easier to get response in that way. Overall, I code message and literally everybody that I can find, or anybody who have ever shared anything interesting online. And I would ask for a coffee chat. If they reply, sometimes they don't want to have a call, so they would just reply to message. That's already good enough. Sometimes I was able to have a quick call with them. Those people are usually really, really helpful, and they're very willing to share their lessons learned. I would ask, okay, where you invest, how was the city, how was the neighborhood, what are the lessons that you learned, and what advice you would give for someone who's just starting like me. Those are very general questions, and people are usually very willing to talk about their success or failure stories. Well, one step further, if the interviewee is very willing to share, then I would maybe in the follow-up messages or follow-up calls ask about their contacts. So a lot of time they would already have some local contacts, right? Local real estate agents, local contractors, or local PM companies that they know that have worked or not worked for them. Those are really valuable information and much, much better than what you can find online. I interviewed around 12 people who had already invested in the areas, and I summarized all the cities that they have invested in. Those are my top list. Apart from that, I actually also did some data analysis. So there are basic information, right, you can get from online. A lot of the posts will be talking about what are the top long-term rental cities, and how was the rent to price ratio, what's the tenant base, what's the industries. Those are the kind of information you can actually get from online. But overall, I would say that one-on-one insights was 10x more valuable than a blog post or YouTube video. And I actually ended up talking to some of them even after I purchased properties in Memphis. So it actually became something more than just a one-time conversation. And that was really helpful. With that information, I was able to compile a big spreadsheet. I have a few columns. I have the state, the city, and landlord policy, so whether the city is landlord friendly or not, and also the neighborhood that people invested in. And I have documented all the notes that what people say about their experience there, what people's specific comments on a real estate agent or a PM company. So I have looked into 5 different states and 7 different cities. So the cities are Savannah from Georgia, Oklahoma City, and Memphis, Tennessee, of course, Kansas City metro area, Indianapolis, and East Chicago. I think maybe the approach that I use is also related to my personality because I love listening to people's stories. And it's always really inspiring to see what people are trying to do outside of their work and how other people are thinking about investing. I remember that I had an interview with one of my colleagues whom I didn't know. I literally just cold messaged her on workplace chat, and I heard back, and we actually had a video call. And she at that time and her boyfriend or husband were doing some construction work at one of their investment property in East Chicago. They were working as well, and then they're just like me, they're W-2 earners, and then they're doing a lot of things by themselves, and they're achieving great success. Just hearing those stories is really inspiring, and I know that I am not alone. And there are so many people out there doing and hustling a lot of the things similar to me. So what are the exact success criteria and red flags in the research phase? So when you are analyzing a market remotely, it's very important. You need to know what you're looking for. Number 1 for me, I'm looking for something close to 1% rent to price ratio. It's actually getting harder and harder these days because rent does not increase as fast as purchase price. Well, again, I'm looking for a landlord-friendly state. I live in California, so I know that California is not one of them. But a lot of the cities or states are. So those are the places that you need to look for. Another thing, because I don't want any tenant issues, so I do want decent neighborhoods with strong tenant demand. And I want to make sure that there is a local industry or job growth. So I know that the city will not become a ghost town in the future. Well, at least in the foreseeable future. And lastly, it's important that I need to have some or could have built local contacts. It's very hard for me, who does not live there as a remote investor, to just reach out to people and get contacts like contractors, PM, or agents. It's the best when somebody else have already worked with them and then I got to work with them through referrals. Those are usually the most reliable leads that I have followed in the past. Memphis actually checked enough boxes for me to feel confident that, okay, I want to start looking and then I want to start buying properties there and then just see how things go. That's how everything started. In the next episode, I will walk you through what happened after I bought the houses. I went through renovating remotely. I have dealt with 2 property managers, and I have tried managing myself for a period of time, actually last year, which led to a lot of stories that I want to share with you guys in the next episode. I had a nightmare tenant. Again, terrible experience, but great stories to tell. And lastly, I'll walk through why long-term rentals are not as worry-free as people think. But the question is, would I do that again? I would say maybe. It really matters which market you pick and whether you have reliable people in the local market. Those are your key success factors. All right. Thank you so much for listening to FI Study Room. Hit follow so you don't miss part 2 of this series. And remember, you don't need to see a city to invest in it. You just need the right strategy and the right people.